It was, hilariously to say, the next big thing, and everyone was hyping it up to be the Warhammer GW killer. And it had a flash moment of when it was outselling it, and then when it was at its peak of the powers, it fumbled the ball, shall we say, and...
Matthew here from miniwargaming.com, and in this video we want to show you how to play Warmachine and Hordes. This is just going to be a really basic tutorial.
I'd like to talk to you about my absolute favorite war game, and it's not 40K. It's a game called Hordes.
The game is Warmachine Tactics, and you guys are on the show floor in a big way.
And the gold Ennie for best game goes to Iron Kingdom's Privateer Press.
Anywhere that's comfortable for you to kind of sit here like this.
That's fine. Yeah. Awesome.
So nice and relaxed.
Yeah.
The recording camera, recording sound. I'll just stick this down here.
Just do a sound check.
I suppose just for the boys and girls at home, if you can just say your name and what factions, armies in Warmachine, Hordes, any that you used to collect.
Okay, so hi, I'm Lee McAlpin. I run a YouTube channel called Bleeped Up Productions. Haven't done content for a while, but back in the day I did a ton of Warmachine content. I also worked with Hand Cannon Online, which was it was like a broadcaster of multiple podcasts, which I did for my faction, which is the only faction you should play, which is Khador, which is not Russia, trust me. But I did dabble in Mercs and also Trollbloods. So I dabbled into the Hordes as well as the Warmachine factions, but mainly Khador, Big Red, Stompy Machines was my faction, yes.
My name is David Cook and I play Necrofactorum from the Crix faction. We're currently in Black Dragon Miniatures in Hinckley in the UK, which is right in the middle of the country, pretty much just East Midlands side. So it is a reasonably sized wargaming store where we focus on hobby and gaming space, running tournaments, events, gaming nights. So we have an online store, but our primary business is people coming in and playing games and building a community and developing the community as opposed to just retail.
I'm Aidan. I play Crix and Everblight and other such factions. I've got like random bits of everything because I have no self-control and a credit card. My name is James Hall. I am the content creator for the JH Miniatures YouTube channel. You might know me from all of my Gaslands related videos from the last 7 to 8 years, as well as all of my work with the Gaslands UK Car of the Month and Car of the Year competitions that ran from 2020 to 2024, so about 5 years. My Warmachine faction was Protectorate of Menoth, and to say I was ever really massively into Warmachine isn't a fair statement, because I wasn't. But I wanted to make this documentary because ultimately Warmachine, Hordes and Privateer Press, they form a significant part of our tabletop wargaming history. It might be hard to imagine now if you're new to this hobby, but there was a time where these guys were the American wargame to keep an eye on, right? If you were an odds-on betting person, they were the odds-on favourite. If anyone was going to topple Games Workshop from the wargaming throne, it was going to be these guys. and then fast forward about 25 years and they're not a shadow of their former selves, right? So the question is, well, how did that happen?
In my opinion, if Privateer Press is serious about making a successful game and gaming community, they've got to play like they've got a pair.
If anyone saw the picture of the Warmachine Privateer Press booth from the Las Vegas Open, that story really will tell it all. Mark IV was out at this point, but like their band, like they didn't have a Mark IV banner. Like the banner they had was like 3 years old. They were still like the first thing on the banner was still Monster Apocalypse. They only had like Mark III stuff for sale, like dead units, like units that were not getting rules in 4th edition. The game was clearly on like a death spiral, and like everyone saw it was on a death spiral.
You can get some really good deals, like deals as in like 5 to 10% of retail. It's pretty it's pretty good for you, pretty bad for sellers. Like there is no resale value for this game. You're pretty much almost getting it for free from people.
This, what I have here in front of me, and I'm going to show you why, is basically the death knell for the company. This is trash. This is garbage. Don't release shit like this. The front cover, completely warped. They're coming apart out of the box. So trash, garbage, right? There's even some like, you can already see weird crimping along the bindings because they're not folding open correctly. Again, you're getting bubbles where the print is separating from the cardboard backing inside of the cover and the back cover. And I can see on every single page, every single one of these pages is about to let go. Every single one of them.
Ailing Warhammer 40k rival Warmachine bought up by competitor.
The big announcement of Warmachine being purchased by Steamforged Games. They've got their work cut out for them. That's putting it mildly.
The Kickstarter launch. So of course, a Kickstarter company are going to milk this as for all it's worth with as many Kickstarters as they can.
All right. Oh, we do have at least a piece of artwork and links to go somewhere to find out more.
But it doesn't say anything about missing dice, missing a ruler, missing basic instructions, missing a rule book, and people will buy this assuming, well, it's a starter set. Of course it comes. It probably doesn't even need to be said that those are included.
What is this? There's literally no instructions here.
It doesn't come with anything you need to play the game. It doesn't come with rules. It doesn't come with a quick start guide, how to, like a quick skirmish game doesn't come with any scenarios. It doesn't, and it's frustrating because like, so what am I paying $100 for?
Whenever a game dies, you have fallout, which is I've always had it with either card games or even miniature games, which we're talking about. With Warmachine, the one thing that attracted to me to it wasn't just like the fact of how cool the minis looked, it was also the lore. So if something sells me on cool minis, the rule of cool effectively is what I liked. The primer, then we've got my faction book, a lore dump where some of my favourite warcasters ever came into Warmachine, Signar because it was free at an event I went to, and Reckoning, which was probably one of my favourite books because it introduced one of my favourite warjacks for the Butcher, his character Jack. But yeah, so where do I begin?
Is it the entirety of everything they ever made for Khador? Or?
No, I don't own everything that Khador runs. I'm missing a few things. My favourite warjack ever was Ruin. This was Butcher's personal jack, and basically you had his Orgoth shield and stuff, but like you just play themed and yeah.
Warmachine is a fast-paced and aggressive 32mm tabletop miniatures battle game for 2 or more players set in the steam-powered fantasy world of the Iron Kingdoms. Each player takes on the role of an elite soldier-sorcerer known as a warcaster. Warcasters act as the commander of an army, and though they are formidable combatants on their own, their true strength lies in their magical ability to control and coordinate mighty warjacks. Each Warmachine combatant is represented on the tabletop by a highly detailed and dramatically posed miniature figurine referred to as a model. Players collect, assemble, and paint these models to represent the varied men, machines, and creatures in their army.
So let's have a bit of a history lesson, right? Let's get everyone up to speed. If you've never heard of Warmachine or Privateer Press, let's just, right, day one, who were they? Why should we care, right? So Privateer Press as a company was established in the year 2000 in America by Matt Wilson, Brian Snoddy and Matt Starosik. And originally the company was founded to release Dungeons & Dragons modules for D&D 3.5 under the Open Game license. Matt Wilson and Brian Snoddy had cut their teeth in the creative industry at Wizards of the Coast. They were Magic the Gathering card artists and concept artists, and they wanted to take that creativity and control it and be able to make their own universe, their own game, make their own money at the end of the day, right? Matt Starosik would make the cover art for the first modules they made. He's a bit of a ghost online, but he made the cover art for the Witchfire trilogy and the Iron Kingdom setting that they would create as a company, and then he vanishes from the picture. So this documentary isn't going to talk about him. But the speed with which Privateer Press would go from formation to creating these modules and creating this universe and all the concept art for it and all the factions and lore and history to then releasing a war game in 2003 is pretty incredible. Now, don't get me wrong, Matt Wilson and Brian Snoddy did not know how to make miniatures. That was not their forte. So they needed someone to help them. And very early on, they were joined by Mike McVeigh. Mike McVeigh of Games Workshop Warhammer fame, right?
But while I was working at Wizards of the Coast as an art director, I met some guys there, and they were running at that point a very small company called Privateer Press. And I jumped on board with those guys as a partner, and we created Warmachine. And I left Privateer Press to come back to the UK in 2007 and set up my own company, Studio McVeigh.
But what Mike McVeigh brought to the table was all the knowledge and experience of being able to design miniatures and take that 2D image and turn it into a 3D model and actually craft miniatures and commission sculpts and get those master sculpts turned into molds and then turn those molds into products that could be boxed and sold. All of a sudden, 2003 Warmachine Prime, Warmachine First Edition is launched.
Hey guys, how's it going? Mike Martin's here, Mike Martin's channel. I just want to do a quick video on Warmachine versus Warhammer. I've played both games, and I'm going to tell you right now, Warmachine is far more superior. Warmachine is a condensed game where it is Warcaster, and that's like your king in chess and your army. Warcaster dies, game's over. Caster kill. But this guy gives focus to these guys within a command check range to allow them to make their special abilities. Without the focus from him, they can't make special abilities, but do basic stuff.
So you have to rewind the clock. You have to remember that we're talking about a very different time here. The wargaming tabletop geek landscape as it was in 2003 is very different to what we know now. And the aesthetics that were popular then, big high fantasy concept, beautiful women, cool giant robots, that kind of ultra fantasy that became really popular in the early 2000s, in the MMO era of geek culture, if you like.
Alright, Phil, when did you start playing Warmachine and Hordes?
I picked up the game about 6 months ago because I walked into the local store that I play at, and there was a demo going on. The owner asked me to play in it instead of having him playing it so we could just sit back and talk, and I got hooked.
I started playing in 2003 when the game was released. Basically, me and some friends walked into our LGS, and to get some Warhammer stuff or something, I don't remember what, but saw the models, and they were just gorgeous figures, and talked to the store manager a little bit about how you just needed that box to play, and we decided we'd all pick a faction up, so there were 4 of us, and we all got a starter box, and I picked up the rule book, and I've just been hooked ever since.
Well, I started dating Rich, and he was playing, and it looked pretty awesome, so I picked up a battle box. Went from there.
How'd you pick your faction? Well, I started off the game with Signar because that's what I had experience with doing the demos, and I really enjoyed them. I liked the shooting aspect of them, and then when I got into Scorn, well, they don't have a lot of shooting, so it was really a big change for me because I wanted a melee army, but I didn't want another Warmachine army at the time. And I really like the Asian feel with all the back banners and stuff like that, so that's why I have both Signar and Scorn.
Well, the first battle box I bought was Crix. You could just say I've played them on and off the entire time. I've went my way through all the factions, but Crix just because love the models, love the playstyle. Legion, my main Hordes faction, was, I've always wanted to play them, but we always had a friend in the gaming group that's been playing them. So as soon as they kind of dropped down, I started playing those. And I've been playing them for a couple of years now, and had a lot of success with them. They're just a really fun army. And once again, I love the models.
I mean, who wouldn't want to play werewolves? You know, I love the models for Circle. So, all of them, pretty much.
The game would take off at an astounding pace. And although Privateer Press would never have the kind of in-house manufacturing that Games Workshop had or other companies had, they kind of didn't need it. They would have metal manufacturing at home, certainly, and some cast plastic stuff, but they didn't have the brick and mortar store presence that companies like Games Workshop did. Games Workshop has always been very unique in that aspect. Being a UK-based company in the 80s, brick and mortar stores were the way to go, right? So that infrastructure was already in place for them. Privateer Press, as a brand new company in America, didn't have that luxury. And with the scale and landmass of America, you can't exactly expect them to start opening up a shop in every single town and city across all the 50 states. It just isn't going to happen. With retail costs and expenses of staff and you name it, if you're a brand new company, you do all of your trading through distributors and local games clubs. And Privateer Press had that system nailed down day one. And then in 2005, you would have Games Workshop cancelling the Outrider program. So you'd then have all of these volunteers, these people that could run game demos, that could run your tournaments, that could run events and spread the name in the different hobby shops, in the different communities across the 50 states. Now, part of the mythos that we fall into when we talk about these game companies is we like to imagine it as a David versus Goliath, right? It's the little plucky American war game company versus the big dog Games Workshop. And it's them versus the world, and they're going to do it. They're going to strike out there and make their game and make their millions, and they're going to come out on top, right? They were just one of many war games in the landscape at that point. You had other miniature manufacturers producing models all over the world, in Europe and France and you name it. They were not the only ones doing this. What they brought to the table that was unique was the fact that their setting was already very well established, had a player base ready to go right out of the box because they had all these D&D players they could convert over to it.
Players of the Witchfire trilogy might remember that the Cult of Cirrus played a very active role in terms of that story, and so there was a harkening back to the past.
But it was a matter of having a compelling reason for this faction to become a player in the battles of Western Imran in Warmachine.
My name is Doug Seacat, lead writer at Privateer Press, and you're in a seminar about the history of Imran in particular, but Kane in a general sense, the history of our world. I'm kind of going to be starting at the dawn of time and going as far as I can until I run out of time. Some of the cosmology that's behind it, since that's an area that I think especially a lot of our Warmachine and Hordes fans don't necessarily know as well as the histories of their individual factions.
And the game itself was really cheap and easy to get into. I mean, we got into it because it was a matter of we were both broke and unemployed. And the Warmachine starter box was cheaper than the GW Mini of the month. The price to entry with Warmachine, the barrier to entry, was almost like non-existent, right? Because all you needed to play was something like this, right? A battle group starter box.
It's got all the miniatures you need, all the rules you need, and an in-depth faction guide telling you more about miniatures you can collect to continue building your forces.
And those battle boxes are probably one of the coolest things to ever get people into games, because you can literally play that out of the box and you didn't need to buy this or buy that and whatever. You could literally just buy that and you're done.
Now, Warmachine was the first game. In 2006, you would see the release of Hordes as a game. And that was the more... If Warmachine is like the steampunk fantasy, Hordes was like the primal bestial fantasy, like with the werewolves and the giant trolls and ogres and rock monsters and all that kind of stuff. What made Warmachine and Hordes so unique as a game system is both systems could be played independently, but they could also be played together. A Warmachine army could very easily fight a Hordes army. There might be some minor differences, but the fundamentals were the same. You killed the warlock of a Hordes army, it's exactly the same as killing a warcaster in a Warmachine army. No other game at the time did this. right, to release two products that were completely interchangeable. They had a wonderful advantage over their competition immediately, because they were an American company making an American wargame for American aesthetics and sensibilities in a market that was crying out for something like that, right?
The game filled a role in wargaming that I think wasn't filled up until that point. A balanced game with synergy and a real competitive nature, where people who practice and get better at the game and understand the rules better can succeed and get a fix from that. It filled that sort of role and created a really good competitive game. And then I think some of the people that were looking for that from other manufacturers that didn't get it kind of flooded to it to a degree, and it really did put its own identity on.
What do we need to do with the trophy? We're going to put our names in big emblazoned letters on it and bring it back here next year and try to take it back with us again.
So they expand, and they expand quickly, and with expansion comes the desire for more products in the catalogue and more growth and just more stuff for people to enjoy. Very quickly they released their own monthly magazine, they released their own paint line, they released a painting tutorial how-to video series that's incredibly retro when you look at it now, but it's a product of its time. But that was also something that no one else was doing at the time. If you wanted painting advice, you had to look in magazines. This is before YouTube takes off, right? You know, the abundance of painting guides and tutorials just didn't exist back then. It was all magazine based, right? Unless you went to a trade show and spoke to someone. Privateer Press would host their own events. Yeah, it was all well and good that Warhammer would attend things like Gen Con or whatever. Privateer Press went, you know what, we're going to have our own competitions. They were going to hold them at SmogCon and Lock and Load Fest, and they were going to have their own competitive scene.
And I'm here with Simon from Privateer Press. Has it moved things forward in the gameplay for people at tournaments and things like that? Do you see like an uptick in that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, Mark II has just been enormous for us. We've more than doubled our production staff in the last 4 months to meet demand. And the participation we're getting at events and tournaments and stuff, it's unbelievable. We're very happy right now.
And multiple levels of competitive scene. You know, it wasn't just a case of you show up for a game and you're just stuck playing the same amateurs. They took a lot of inspiration, I think, from Wizards of the Coast's own Magic sort of Grand Prix system at the time. You know, if you won enough local games, you would get invited to a regional game.
In 2013, for our casual tier, players can expect to see an update for the Journeyman rules. It's going to give them even more options than before.
We're going to have book release events with the special one-day scenarios where people just come in and play. We're going to have Iron Arena. We're making that bigger and better with new prizes, new gameplay experiences.
And then our league this year, Machinations, is going to be awesome.
Unlike leagues previously, Machinations actually has an overall year storyline that players are going to be a part of, and they're going to be able to discover and uncover very special and hidden spoilers.
Which would allow you to get qualified enough to take part in a global game, Worlds.
The very first qualifier is going to be at Lock and Load 2013, with the first final being held at Lock and Load 2014. In between there, we're going to have several global qualifiers. If you place high enough, you're going to earn points that'll get you a spot in the finals in 2014, where you'll take your shot at earning the title Best in the World.
All these positive factors leading to this period of growth where it feels like they can do no wrong. So they start releasing other games as well. They release Monster Apocalypse, they release Level 7 Escape. If you look at kind of the list of all the things that Privateer Press does at this point, it's massive. It's absolutely insane the amount of expansion they do over the course of like 10 years. Privateer Press as a company had Warmachine, Hordes, those were the main games. They had Grind as a board game that released in 2009. They had High Command, the living card game, the deck building card game. They had Iron Kingdoms, which was their role-playing setting. They had the video game Wargame Tactics that came out, as well as a game before that was originally worked on by the studio, but would eventually become Warmachine Tactics. But there was footage that was very clearly not what became Warmachine Tactics. You would have a string of little Munchkin-like party games that they would produce. you had Monsterpocalypse as a board game and Level 7, which were just completely different from Warmachine and Hordes. From the success of Monsterpocalypse and its IP tie-ins, you would then have whispers of a Monsterpocalypse film being produced that was going to come out, that was being directed by Tim Burton, and then Guillermo del Toro, and then that falls through. You had the animations, you had the cosplay, you had the statue making and the art competition and the game and the tournaments. They had collectible pin badges, they had apparel, t-shirts and lanyards, you had trophies you could win, you had certificates. They had funded at one point the charity auction for the Rock Band video game to have a Warmachine song performed and put in the game, and that money was then donated to charity. They didn't have to do that, but it was all about that perception of power and wealth and being established on the wargaming tabletop scene, and that we are here and we are a contender and we are the American answer to this problem, right? And if anyone's going to take Games Workshop off of that #1 podium, it's going to be us. It's not going to be anyone else, it's going to be us that does it. And that's kind of when I think things start to fall apart, because the reality is the horror story that we are watching, that I'm telling you, is that even with all this growth and success and everything being a straight trajectory upwards, there start to come the problems. And ultimately it is a slow decline to the shadow that the company would then become. Because always remember, in 2024, Privateer Press would sell the IP, the intellectual rights to the Iron Kingdom, to Warmachine, Hordes, the paint range, the magazine, all of it. They would sell all of it to Steamforged Games for a few more months and years of existence. The question is, how did we get to that point?
What's up? This will be our first Fields of Ruin game because Scabrous is broken. I say he's playing against Coop with Codor. What's Crix got?
Crix is running P. Gaspy, Cankerworm, Malice, 2 Death Rippers and a Seether, minimum unit of Bane Thralls with the UA, the Warwitch Siren, Wither Shadow Combine, Tartarus, and minimum Bane Knights.
So what'd you do?
What did I do? I killed some stuff.
I did a boosted range shot on him. I needed an 11, got it, and
it was just -5 on damage, and he rolled a 5 and 2 1s.
2 1. Just enough potential.
Just enough.
So this little Man of War, probably MVP.
I thought you had this.
I thought I had too, and then all of a sudden, like, he just doing stuff. I'm like, you know, he's got a straight shot at me.
This coming Saturday, there will be a tournament again in Bakersfield with Tin Man. Hordes Genesis 35-point tournament.
Tin Man.
Hey, that for a second I thought that was a flip cam.
No, it's not a flip. We are here, Bakersfield.
It's on.
You got the old GWW with the double white.
Tournament is getting set up right now. Got Dan, Tin Man, Tom, Percy. Okay, tournament started.
Yes.
Scorn, Menoth, Legion, Kydor, Scorn, Crix. And there's Tin Man. He was running the whole thing, which is awesome. So, good luck in your game.
Thanks, man. It just defeats me in the soul.
Yep.
Yeah.
Another fun day was had here at Paladin's Game Castle.
Yeah. So, break down to you. I took a destroyer and a Kodiak. Oh, I lost.
And we are leaving Bakersfield.
Beaten, battered, bloody, bruised, but happy as hell nonetheless.
Yep. There goes Paladin's Game Castle.
Bye, friends.
You'll try me back for another steamroller here pretty soon.
Yes, we will.
It just kind of is sad. Like, you look back on it and it's like, I've met friends for life through playing Warmachine, and I would not be having some of the friends I have now because of Warmachine. And like, it's pretty crazy when you think about some of the interactions you've had over a miniatures game, and you explain it to people and they go like, oh, so you roll dice and you move models. I'm like, yeah. They're like, is it fun? And I'm like, yeah, it is.
How did Warmachine die, and why did it die?
Okay, so this is me saying this. So I'm not going to say for the community. I can't speak for everyone because everyone has their own things. So obviously with Warmachine and with any game system you have, you always have the competitive scene. So on our podcast, Murder of Crows, we talked to, eventually our panel was basically made of really good British players that played competitive Warmachine, and a filthy casual known as me. So basically we had the competitive aspect of Warmachine and the non-competitive aspect of Warmachine. And that's with most games. If there is a game out there, they're going to try and turn it into a competitive thing.
We have all these great formats for organized play in 2013, but you know what? We wanted more.
Warmachine ended up being a very competitive miniatures game, and that's the way I saw it going in our local area as well in Leicestershire, was we would put on tournaments and it would just be, I'm only practicing this one list.
It's that drive to want to be the best and compete and turn it into a real sport where you really achieve something when you destroyed your friend on a tabletop. No, not really for me personally. Like, you know, I just want to roll some dice and have some fun.
Some of the things in this game were like brutal. Like, you couldn't kill them, but you could kill them if you knocked them down. But there were like little trigger things you'd need to know, obviously, if you played the games.
As Signar is wrapping up their turn, he has nullified that Reckoner.
I cannot believe that is a move right there.
Yeah.
Like, that's
arm lock for the win.
Arm
in
lock
Iron
for the
Gauntlet.
win in Iron Gauntlet. You know, and that is the caliber of play that you see. I mean, who would have thought to bring out an arm lock at this point?
Yep.
It's, you know, that's genius. It's up there with the push to assassinate, but even better.
Sure.
Chandler trying to figure out a way around that arm lock and asking if he cripples the arm that is dealing the arm lock if the lock is broken.
He can ask that, but what is he going to cripple it with?
So like, oh, I just need to beat your defense to kill you. I'm like, no, I just need to knock you over. Why? Because then that means I can buy more attacks because I'm auto-hitting and I'm just going to try and murder you. And they go, oh. And you're like, yeah, sorry, bro. Like, I used to play a lot of a warcaster called Sorsha and Beast 09. If that crit hitted you, you just became stationary. So hitting you was like a 5+ on 2 dice. That's really rare, but also it then made you like immobile. So basically you then had this giant strength 19 hammer coming down on you, and most armor was like 15. So you're already doing 4 points of damage. Most warcasters had 15 health. So a couple of boosted attacks into them, you're dead.
Oh my gosh!
No.
22 damage!
It's the oldest gag with Warmachine will always be the idea that you show up for a friendly local game with your good friend, and it's like, right, time to bring out the most cheesiest bullshit list. And
It's true!
My turn. So your casual friend goes, right, I move my guys forward, no one's in range, no one can charge combat, right, onto you, great, I move my guys forward, feat, spell, ability, spell, roll some dice, that's it, your warcaster's dead.
I did it on one, I trolled in one tournament. I literally took Zakova and everyone was like, who the hell is she? And I was like, I know. Who the hell is she? And then I basically popped my feet and the guy was like, what does it do? And I was like, this. And I explained it and he just... Every opponent I went to in that tournament went like, no it doesn't. Judge, by the end of it, and I can quote, I won't throw this judge's name under the bus, came over and was like, Lee, are you playing Zakova again? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, just fucking stop it, please, effectively. And I was like, they don't believe me. I'm telling them the truth. And he's like, have they read the card? I'm like, yeah, reading the card explains the card. But they just never believed me that she just basically just wags her finger and goes, no, can't do that. Sorry. Just one turn where you're not going to do anything.
Alright, here's a fun one. What army do you hate facing? What army just makes you go, ah, when you see it on the table?
Men off.
But I hate it when I play against Troll Bloods.
Cricks. without a doubt. Every time that, you know, I've got my butt just like stomped into the ground, it's been from cricks.
The amount of fire they can put out, the sheer number of weapon masters they have, and the overall synergy of the army, when it works perfectly behind a good player, it is really incredibly hard to beat, and I just seem to struggle against them the most out of every faction.
And it's because of one thing. I have lost more games to successful tough rolls than anything else. I absolutely hate tough. Love troll models, thinking about getting into them one day, but just not a fan of tough.
And it really hasn't mattered who played them. As long as there was cricks on the table, not good for me.
There is a few factions where you go like, I don't want to play this faction ever again, this sucks.
Warmachine is a competitive game. Hordes is a competitive game. And it makes no attempt to pretend that it is anything other than that. A lot of the things that would come out of early tabletop wargaming culture, like win-at-all-cost gamers, owe their direct lineage to Warmachine and Hordes. That was the birthplace of win-at-all-cost gamers.
So Brian now considering where he needs to go next.
What to do? What to do?
I think he's going for that assassination.
Checked line of sight. Line of sight is good. So Lilith is up there.
All right, time to pincushion that woman.
They're double checking the 6 inches.
Got it
this
by
is a
more than
snapfire
enough.
shot. Here we go.
So boost it.
Does Haley go down? Needs an 8 to hit. Got it.
That'll hit.
Dice off 2. Boosting damage.
Oof. 15 boxes on Haley. Needs a big roll here. 15 points
on the
shot
nose.
to 1.
And Brian White wins the game one-shotting Haley.
One shot to the eyeball of Haley. Takes her right down.
Crap.
Wow.
That was insane.
Well, you said Karma would give him the high rolls. Apparently, you were correct about one thing this weekend.
And it was the one thing that
this
mattered.
weekend, and the one thing that mattered.
You either beat the other guy and killed their warcaster, or you lost. That was it, right?
In that community of players, you have very few people, and they do exist. The genuine people that want to, get better. So they'll happily tell you everything and guide you to make you a better player, so that you're a better challenge for them. Yeah. But there's also, a lot of people that aren't very good and will take every opportunity to not tell you something, to pull the wool over your eyes and get a victory, even though it's hollow and they've cheated. They don't care. On their app, on their phone, that's another victory in my stats. That's a 99% win rate now.
Like, we know at least one person who's tried the game out, played it with someone who's a complete tournament player, has completely smashed them, and they've been like, I have no interest in this game. And that is an issue with the player, but there's a system there that allows that element of poor behavior.
Just like anything, if you're not replenishing people that leave the hobby, it's the leaky bathtub theory. If you've never heard about it before, the hobby's a leaky bathtub. You're constantly losing hobbyists, so you have to replenish it with new water, right?
Yeah.
So any miniature game that's not doing that, actively recruiting people, they're just getting smaller every year in size.
And that, for a lot of people, where they're like, I think those miniatures are cool and I like the game, which is essentially me. Those are pretty cool miniatures. I like the game. I like the way you attribute damage and hits.
Everything became game pieces and chess pieces, and the hobby element was missing. Not that people didn't. Lots of people painted their Warmachine armies, but most of them didn't. If you went and witnessed competitive events, it was just great.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another, at the end of the day, with Games Workshop pieces, they do cultivate a hobby mentality way more than any other company.
Going to mouse map terrain, I mean, at that point, what do you want to play a tabletop game, or do you want to just play a top-down computer game where everything's 2D and measurements perfect? And that's another thing, is you start getting to the boundaries start to blur between, are you playing toy soldiers and miniatures, or are you playing a competitive game with, very strict boundaries and non-abusable mechanics? I mean, we've all played the tabletop game where somebody's measurement's not quite on point, and you let it slide in some games because you think, oh, actually, what are they going to gain from half an inch? But in Warmachine, you gain quite a lot from half an inch. It could be make or break. It could kill your warcaster. It could end the game and ruin your tournament.
Introduce an element of uncertainty that I could see being a problem, especially if you're playing explicitly for speedy rounds, because that sort of disagreement, I thought that was this, it's not this, suddenly that turns into time on the clock and you're wasting time in a round, especially when some tournament players are playing 10-minute turns or whatever the fuck. It's that is razor thin.
These guys are going to attack.
Uh-oh.
Ice down.
I got more objectives! I have more objectives, people!
Wow.
Good game, Norbert.
Good game. Oh my goodness. I can learn how to play faster.
The jump between Mark II and Mark III, there were some huge rules changes which people didn't like. There was points changes, how everything slowly verged to having theme lists, where it was really cool to see, like, you can take this, this, and this. And you're like, okay, that's really cool. And then some of those theme lists were busted as balls.
Now, if you went to the website and you went to filter by unit, it was like hundreds and hundreds of units per faction, and they kept everything. And you started to run into problems where you had, and I mentioned the points numbers, where you had like, 15 units that were in the 3-point range and another like 8 units that are in the 4-point range. And how do you start differentiating their effectiveness? Because what will happen is you'll invariably just pick the best one of each category.
And the game doesn't protect you from that, because the game very clearly states that this is a competitive war game. And you're either in it to win it, and if you're not, then there's the door, and this game isn't for you. In your own words, what is page 5 in Warmachine?
What is page 5?
Oh God. That's a copy from the original rulebook.
Yeah.
What is page 5?
What?
Oh, this is the thing that I thought was the coolest thing on earth when I was 13.
Page 5 was like the creative idea, wasn't it? I think. I can't remember, actually. That's a really... Page 5.
This is where to start, isn't it? It's a relic of a different time.
Yeah, I mean...
It's 100% based and not cringe in the slightest.
Warning, not suitable for wussies. Page 5. Sissies, little girls and Nancy boys should go home now. This game is not for you.
If you cry when you lose, get lost, 'cause you're going to lose. If it hurts your fragile sensibilities to see your favourite character get pounded unmercifully by a rapid succession of no-holds-barred iron fury, you'd better look the other way. If you've ever whined the words, "That's too powerful," then put the book down slowly and walk away before making eye contact with anyone, or they'll realise your voice hasn't changed yet. This is raw, this is brutal, this is Warmachine! So play like you've got a pair, or put down the medal and go join a quilting bee.
If you were to make this as a statement now, your game would bomb immediately. You would be cancelled. Is the truth of it?
I can tell you, in my whole time of doing Warmachine, I can definitely say I've heard play like you got a pair, but I never understood it came by page 5. And this was in the rulebook.
It was in every single rulebook.
Shut the front. 1 second. I'm going to quickly grab this. 1 sec. I'm going to laugh.
Mark 2 onwards, it would gradually change.
Shut up.
From Mark 2. So
yes, this is Mark 2, so it might be different.
It's going to be different. It's going to be a bit more toned down.
I'm going to re-attack this. So you're telling me on page 5...
Yeah, honest to God.
Shut the front door. Page 5, here we go. Okay, so the page 5... Oh, yeah, okay. Thou shalt not whine. Come heavy or don't come at all. Give as good as you get. Win graciously and lose vigilantly. Page 5 is not an excuse. Play like you've got a pair. Okay.
Yeah.
You never really read those books. You go straight through the first couple of pages and go like, right, how do I play the game?
It's a little bit exclusionary. It's almost trying to decide what your community is going to be, rather than naturally allowing your community.
And again, Warmachine wargaming at the time was very different, wasn't it? It's not your 4 teenage lads in a Games Workshop shop on an afternoon in 2004 would have read this and been like, "This is amazing, metal, yeah, let's play this game." Whereas now people are like, really?
Is they had this whole thing, this could be a hardcore game for men and manly men and butch men, and it's like, if you met wargamers, they're a little bit...
We didn't set out to reinvent the wheel with this game. We just armor plated it, covered it in spikes, and rolled it over your grandma's house.
It's pretty embarrassing, to look back on, but that's as it was.
The game lives and dies by a community. I think also one of the factors, which I don't want to speak too much about it because I wasn't, was their press ganger thing, because a lot of people wanted to play the game, and they were given X amount of points to be a press ganger that they could then spend those points to get models and stuff so they can keep playing their game, but they also gave up their time to do it. But the problem was what they had was a lot of people were just doing it so they could get free models, and they never really cared about the community or did that. So you had people who were really passionate and people who were like not really into it, but they just wanted free stuff.
Press Gang has been around now for almost 14 years, good gosh. I think the very first Press Ganger was commissioned in 2002, and it really didn't quite kick off till 2003. Since then, it's been growing and growing as the game has. Currently, we have Press Gangers who service all 50 states, and we just got up to 43 countries that currently have active Press Gangers running events in them. Wow. We have everything from China, New Zealand, Croatia, all over Europe, Russia, the Philippines. We just added another one in Japan here recently, South Africa, so almost every continent.
Here are the details. Here are the facts. The other day here, Privateer Press put out a statement saying, "We are disbanding the Press Ganger system. Thank you to everyone, but it's coming to an end." The reasonings that they give is that things are just getting so busy now. There's so many different press gangers. It's such a massive system to try and contain and actually use, and it's just not feasible anymore. So really, if you didn't know, press gangers, you had to run events, and when you ran events, you got points. And for these points, they had a store where you could go on and spend those points to get free stuff. So awesome. Press gangers got a little free something for running stuff. But some people are wondering if they're doing this for another reason. And another reason is that actually Wizards of the Coast with Magic the Gathering is going through a silly lawsuit right now where the judges there are trying to say, hey, we're doing this work and you're not paying us.
Magic judges, people who judge Magic tournaments and events, Magic the Gathering, the card game, they get sort of benefits the same way that, say, most demo team people get some sort of benefits. They either get special cards that only judges get, maybe, or I don't know exactly what they got, but they got some stuff. And a couple of Magic judges out west in the California region, from what I understand, sued Wizards of the Coast because they said, oh, well, since you're paying us, we're now employees.
Basically, their argument is that they're sort of overworked with no agreement of payment, and even though they're treated as employees, they have none of the benefits of being employees. And as employees, they deserve the rights and benefits that employees should earn. Things like meal breaks and stuff like that.
I don't know a lot about the case. You can go onto Wizards of the Coast website. They have a press release kind of explaining what's going on and how it's basically bunk in their mind, but of course that's what they have to do. I don't know which way's going either way, but I have a suspicion that something like that is kind of indicating which way the wind's blowing. So the source that I talked to said they were pretty sure the reason that Privateer Press had decided to get rid of the Press Ganger program was because they wanted to head that kind of thing off at the pass. They had a lot of people that they had given a lot of points to, and a lot of those points had turned into product that they had been, then purchasing with points off the website for Privateer Press and all this stuff. And they were concerned about potential lawsuits down the road, I suppose. So they decided we should really just kind of cut this off ahead of time.
Even though press gangers are a volunteer system, the whole fact that people might be trying to claim some lost fees could be a possibility. Now, whether that's real or not, who can ever know? We can never know if that's actually true, but it's something that might actually be there. Now, another reason why they could be doing this is actually just also the money. We're talking about all those points and all the free things they give out, and I'm sure with all these different people trying to give away this free product, it's probably cost them a lot of money. So to try and run this program, there's got to be a point where you're looking at the benefits to the cost and going like,
killing that program killed a lot of momentum for people who genuinely loved being a part of the scene and like, oh yeah, I'm giving up my weekend to help run, not play the game I love, just judge and help out the community and help that when that program got killed, that was sad. But I also feel like if you kept that going, it probably would have lasted longer because there's some amazing people I've met who were press gangers, as they were called, And it was just really fun when all of them literally said, oh yeah, it's dead, so I'm not going to do it. And some people were like, well, it's sad because of this, this, and this. And I won't mention names because I don't want to, but a lot of them were hurt by it because it was like a few bad apples ruined it for a lot of other people.
I met a lovely gentleman from Columbia here at Lock and Load that we've been talking back and forth, and it had been a bit hard for him. He helped bring the entire game into his home country and got it all started there because he was thinking about being a distributor. He didn't quite have the skill set and connections, but he got people going in it. So he basically founded the game there, and now he's supporting it in the press game program.
That's very good.
They did a lot of things right early on. Things like the press ganger program, things like, you know, trying to set up international distribution to get models around the world quicker. But the focus was always on the American market, because in a very short space of time, as an American company, they dominated the American landscape. If you were in America in the early 2000s and 2010s, Warmachine was on every shelf in every hobby store. You did not have to look far for a game of Warmachine. Here in the UK, or mainland Europe, or Australia,
Privateer Press basically kept everything to their side of the pond, so we would get it eventually, but it was always extortionate prices. I remember some of us were trying to get models and we ended up paying stupid amounts of postage and packaging just to get it, and it basically alienated like Europe and other countries.
It's more difficult to get hold of the competitive stuff, the stuff that people were running because popularity. Obviously, there's demand. The bigger retailers that sell, you know, large amounts online, and the American market would obviously, whatever was the most competitive items and the stuff that was made your list, you know, a reliable sort of gaming force that you could win games with, were harder to get hold of.
When I talk about tournaments, it's like I used to cover Worlds, which is basically countries send their best 4 players to go and play Warmachine to be the best in the world, and only if one country can have access to them, it's kind of like makes it a bit meh, you know.
Last year, our winner was from Australia. It was our first international winner. Before that, it had been USA, I believe, 3 years in a row. Australia took it away, so there's a little North American pride on the line this year. I bet.
because ultimately you're not going to worry about trying to distribute models to other countries if you fundamentally want your country to win.
Unit X that's really good for this particular faction that's popular, it's like, okay, we'll put it on order, and it would take a while to get hold of. You know, it wasn't a sort of it'll be a next week thing. You know, and you see that with any large game that's very, very popular, the demand outstrips. You know, it becomes the point where you might wait weeks or months, and to some point you might actually wait longer than that thing's a viable competitive unit. You know, by the time that it starts hitting the shelves again, everyone says it's dead. You know, that's the old way. This is the next hot things on order, so to speak.
And if we're continuously being discouraged by Privateer Press just not having their product available, we're going to start buying these other things. It's just the way that things go. And that is a major problem right now. That is why when I'm hearing from various other communities in North America, the game is a lot stronger and there's more people playing as opposed to over in Europe where so many people have given up on it.
Everybody that's in the community's got one, or God forbid, the rules change and nobody wants it because it's trash now anyway.
Privateer Press constantly kept changing things and errated stuff, so everything became digital, which for some people was easy to do, but not everybody, because everyone likes card and, you know, those old things. But then they would effectively say, okay, we need to errata some things, so this person's changing because of the meta of the tournament basis of things. So your original cards were pretty much becoming non-void. So you'd buy a miniature, it didn't come with a card, or it did, and then effectively a couple of months later it would change.
They would take models and put them in this like player testing pool, and players could take those rules, so they try to involve the players.
Right. Yeah,
and then something would like release. They'd be like, okay, this is it, and then people would backlash if they didn't like things. So then they would have to change it because they were like, now they were like, because they're working with the with the community, and now they have to like bend the knee when the community's annoyed. But this doesn't jive with what model releases super well, because if that was supposed to be new release this month, but the players hate the rules for it, so now no one's buying that. Like, see where I'm going with it, right? So
the most common feedback was, why would you order those in? And it's like, well, they're the start. They're the sort of get you started boxes. They're the first sort of tentative foray into playing the game. We go, oh no, nobody uses those. So a lot of it was just dead stock immediately.
They can't.
Well, the chain reaction that happens is often like forgotten about, right? So like if Y Hobby Shop has a big Warmachine section, and 90% of the wall on the blister rack is like stuff that's really just not moving. You have to times that by 10 or 100 when you go to the distributor level, and it just starts to this backup happens.
Then stores are still like, but I carry everything on the shelf because you guys aren't retiring anything.
Right.
And when they would make new stuff that was better than the old stuff, then the old stuff just sat there.
Like you don't want to put hundreds of pounds or thousands of pounds even into stocking something that's going to be dead stock, and then you can't then reinvest that money back into just restocking everyday items like paint and brushes and the usual stuff that does shift.
The high turnover things.
Yeah. The consumable sort of every day, every week things that people pop in and grab.
You already had like a bit of that discounting culture going on with like some, they didn't have the strong trade practices that Games Workshop does, whether you like that or not. It does protect businesses from racing to the bottom to destroy themselves. But you didn't have that protection with Warmachine, so like online web stores could literally mark their stuff up as little as like 5%, and essentially after shipping and fees like are making nothing, and every store is like, why am I selling this on my shop wall?
Another big competitor was doing all the right things and competing in the same space, and it kind of started to sort of die off at the same time that the other one is taking up that space, and ultimately I think it took a long time for it to completely sort of die a death locally, but it did. Even the guys that were hardcore Warmachine players were playing other things, and they weren't playing it anymore. And then at that point it was like, it's got to go on eBay. It's gathering dust. It's not selling at all. Nobody's interested. Not even your kind of miniature painters. Where they're like, well, I'll just buy it because it looks interesting. It's like it's just doing nothing. So at that point, you've got to kind of pull the plug and try and reinvest and use the shelf space for something that is going to get you some sales.
Yeah. America would always be the priority for new product releases because that was their backyard. That was their competitive edge from day one. They didn't have to worry about expanding into the world's largest economy. They were already there. And that gave them a tremendous advantage from the start. But later down the line, it would come back to haunt them.
Now here's our first stop at Ollie's, and this is only one part of their Christmas haul. And they have Han Solo. That's a rarity to see Han Solo on store shelves here. Gotta love all these Shang-Chi toys popping up at this new Ollie's location. Man, to be a kid on Christmas 2023, I got Shang-Chi and Eternals toys. My parents didn't like me.
And when you're on the outside looking in, when the cracks start to form, they expand very quickly. Because there is more to Warmachine and Privateer Press and Hordes vanishing than just a competitive game with poor distribution and a bite the hand that feeds you player base, right? You add all the problems that the company itself faced. And that's what we're going to talk about in the third part. The untold stories of Warmachine's downfall. It's always really easy when you're on the outside to think that you have all the information that a company is going through, like all the financial issues they have, all of the setup costs and material costs, because we can make educated guesses based on the industries around us and what other games companies do and what our stores are doing and how we individually feel about a game system, right? It's a whole other thing to actually have the chance to talk to someone who was at ground zero, who worked at that company, because the stories that I'm going to talk about now are the stories that don't make it to press, because they don't want you to know this, because it's embarrassing, because it hurts the company, because it's a part of their history that they wish didn't happen, and because it would have been easier. It would have been easier to move forwards if these things never happened.
2011, 2010, somewhere around there. That's when I started. 9 years at Privateer, correct. We're talking 2010 to 2019.
So, miniature manufacturing is a prime example. One of the most common arguments I hear about why Warmachine, Hordes and Privateer Press slowly ground to a halt while their constant expansion slowly reached its boundary and started to snap back is because they invested heavily into metal miniature manufacturing at the start, which was the done thing. That's what all companies did. They got into resin and cast plastics as a way of replacing that as the metal costs around the world just skyrocketed, white metal costs specifically. And one of the arguments is that they should have invested in HIPS injection molded plastic. They should have stamped out the kind of sprues that Games Workshop and other companies make, right? Without realizing the amount of upfront cost and capital something like that requires, as well as the restrictions that a company like Privateer Press has, depending on where they have their headquarters and their warehouse. Because zoning laws are a thing.
If you configured the machines, the machine cost, it was just way more money than what we had on hand. The infrastructure needed would just be immense. I remember it being discussed multiple times too, and it always came back to just the cost would be way too much. And the molds are expensive. I don't know if you know this, but HIPS molds are like, what, 20,000? It's like buying a new car. Yeah, so imagine that, and then how much you need to worry about the shipping costs, material, and not just, the mold, but the labor and everything for it. And then when you get to the States, I know when people saw the prices for those things, like, wow, that's a lot of money. Well, the margins aren't very high in the gaming industry. Oh boy, like, there's a reason why I left, and part of it was that, and geez.
And that's ignoring the fact that Privateer Press did do some HIPS injection molded plastic models. They existed with all of the Colossals and certain models for Kador and Signar, right? The difference there is they didn't do it in-house because they couldn't, so they looked for the next cheapest alternative, which was contracting it out, specifically to Chinese manufacturers. And as the story goes, part of the reason why they changed over to 3D printed resin with the announcement of Mark IV and, stopping all of the legacy models was the idea that the rumor that the Chinese manufacturer of choice decided they were going to hold the Warmachine molds for stamping out those kits. They were going to hold those molds hostage until Privateer Press, Matt Wilson, whoever, agreed to buy more. You want to buy 100 kits to fulfill an order, they're expecting you to buy 1,000. And you don't want to buy 1,000, so you don't. And they go, right, well, we're just going to manufacture them for someone who will pay for it.
Well, you just hit the nail on the head. It's a common practice within those kind of industries where they're going to gouge you. Like, okay, you want, like Matt Wilson, well, for example, he didn't do it like this, but hey, I need 1,000 extra, I don't know, Signar Colossals. And they're, no, 2,000. And then it's because of they're overseas. There are so many factories. They're going to play the whole game where they hold the molds ransom. And then if they don't like what they see, they just ghost you. It's way more common than it has happened to more places than Privateer Press. I can tell you that much. And that is the more annoying part about it.
There is a reason why when you go on Wish or Temu or AliExpress or any of these, foreign import websites, that you will find counterfeit Warmachine models. Counterfeit models of characters that were only ever available at events as exclusives, right? And it's because of this. It's because of the reality that these molds were held hostage, and when Privateer Press left that relationship, well, you're not going to just chuck those molds in the bin. You're going to try and recoup some of your losses, right? You're going to make some models. You're going to sell some kits under the cover, under the table online, as it were. You know, the fact that you have things that were only ever meant to be available at one event in like 2016, but in the year of our Lord 2025, you can go on wish.com right now and find, that tells you something. It never officially gets talked about because it's embarrassing.
It's way more common than anyone thinks. Like one of my other memories were in the case boxes for various plastic kits. There were counterfeit magic card, prints in there. Yeah, so there were counterfeit Pokemon card prints, magic card prints. If you can name a card game, I saw counterfeit prints of it in the 2015-2016 era. So they're doing shady stuff already. They're doing it with printed goods already.
You have the Chinese counterfeit Warmachine models that get released. The toys that get released that were never meant to be a thing. Because at the end of the day, if the deal falls through, but you've still got all the means to produce it, you're going to do it. And so they did. One of the arguments that comes up a lot is the idea that if people weren't enjoying the change from Mark III to Mark IV and the change to 3D printed resin instead of metal or plastic or all of that, then why not just go back and reproduce some of those original, you know, models, like the Mark I, Mark II, Glory Day stuff, as it were. And the story goes something like this. So in 2019, Privateer Press, they have to move their headquarters. They're currently based in Washington, and the landlord at the building that they lease out has informed them that they're selling the property out from under them, and they got to move, right? They're giving them the legal minimum notice, be gone, we're going to bulldoze this and turn it into a car park or something, whatever, I don't know. So they have a very short space of time in 2019 to pack up everything, every single model and kit and bit of product and cards and all of it, get it all on boxes and pallets and ship it out to a new warehouse that they got to find quick. And it is chaos, and you can see images online of the chaos that they went through.
Yeah, and the guy swung by and even said, like, the sales rep was like, what's going on? Are you guys okay? What's going on over there? Yeah, and he and some warehouse logistics people go out for lunch and they would talk shop, but yeah, he found out, like, oof. And much later on, at my other job, when I was doing some paperwork for unloading some trucks, one of the guys recognized me. He's like, "Hey, you're from that game company. What happened over there?" It's like, dude, I'm over here now. I was like, yeah, I can see that.
How this story affects the company isn't just in all the delays and the chaos that causes. It's what happens to all the things that you would need if there are bits missing from the manufacturing process. In 2023, in Washington, a guy would bid on and win a storage locker at an auction. It's a blind auction, you don't know what's in the storage locker, and he wins it, opens it up, and finds lots and lots of boxes labelled War. After doing a bit of research, he realises these aren't boxes of Warhammer, they are boxes of Warmachine, Hordes, Monster Apocalypse, Level 7 Escape, all of this stuff, right? It is stock far in excess of what a store or distributor would normally have. And there is also a small white box in the photos that he posts online that say Level 7 Escape and Monster Apocalypse Master Models. The originals. The originals that all molds for those models were made from. Left in a storage locker.
That was a Privateer Press locker, well, because of the molds and everything, but the one that gave it off was the plastic RuneShaper kits. I kind of did some order pulling way back in the day. I would have known if some madman was going to order 2,000 of those things. There are at least 2,000 RuneShapers in there. I'm like, yeah, no, that's oh boy, yeah, Privateer wants that swept under the rug.
And those images are on the screen now, and you can see these are genuine. I've stripped paint off of Monster Apocalypse models. They do not look like this underneath. These are the original master models. You can't make more molds if the originals are gone.
Each mold has a lifespan of pulling through it because you pour resin in, and the resin is going to stick to no matter how hard you try, whatever. There's always going to be something's going to stick, right? Yeah, so even with mold release, you're looking at, I'm lowballing here, maybe 10 pulls. So you get 40 shoulder pads before you have to make another mold again. And mold making is an art in and of itself.
And this is the kind of news that Privateer Press buries. They don't talk about it, don't release a statement about it, don't even mention it, because it's embarrassing. There's no doubt about it that this is real. It's not some hobby shop or eccentric collector, not with the amounts we're talking about here. This is a storage locker that wasn't meant to be forgotten, but it was in the chaos.
A few contacts I know the details of it, but I did not really care to learn more about it because it just seemed like they're thinking, oh man, this is them in their twilight. Of course they did something like that, and I just brushed it off as like a little funny thing that I knew I knew this was gonna happen sometime. It's just, hey, look, it finally happened.
Yeah,
and it's more than likely, yeah, because the first move they did, they were kind of in a rush, and there was a lot of things that fell through the cracks of what to keep track of and what not to. So I imagine it's one of those once again.
It's part of the funny optics that happens with Privateer Press and Warmachine and Hordes. At one point, they did everything, right? They did the mystery crates, they did the subscription boxes. At one point they released Mini Crate, which was like their model of the month, right? Pay a set fee or subscribe, and each month we will send you a unique model. I back that. I have loads of them. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, a mini a month, that's easy to paint. And then naturally there's like 60 unbuilt mini crates. It was a stand-in for something else that you could play in the game and get retail already. So it wasn't like super mechanically unique or something like that, but it was an alternate sculpt. And the main selling point for this was, these are a limited edition run. We will print this once and then that's it. And we will demonstrate that loyalty by destroying the molds for the models themselves. And we will put on a fanfare. It'll be a fan vote. You know, how do you want the mold destroyed? Do you want it set on fire or sealed in concrete or destroyed with tools or dropped off a bridge into a river, right?
So I just want to put it out there, what do you call that? The one where they had the production people doing it, they were too excited. Like, you could feel the excitement dripping off them to make that video, and God bless them, but they look so happy. You can see in the video.
And when you think about the cost that goes into designing a model, making it, making the mold for that model, and then casting all the miniatures, and a few extra in the case of miscasts, all of a sudden, to then destroy all of that is terrible. That's an act of desperation. I think it's always tragic if you join a game and the thing you want is gone. Like, someone's like, hey, look at this thing that would fit really well with a female army. And you're like, yeah. And it's like, yeah, great. It's available for 1 month. And someone on eBay selling it for 620 quid. And it's like, oh. Only to then later find out 6 months or a year down the line that none of it was limited edition anyway. And that, you know, they actually had so much of it still in stock in the warehouse that they could resell it all again anyway.
After we make all the mini crate, we make an extra 200 just in case for, did we miscount, miscast, blah, blah, blah. It was just what do you call that? The safety net. And then after a year, like, let's go stop the safety net. Why not?
Terrible, terrible choices towards the end through acts of desperation to try and patch the things that they thought, with the information they had at the time, they thought they could fix. And you can understand that, because we all can.
A lot of the people that made that game what it was left the company as well, completely forgetting about this. And I think that's what also changes the dynamic of anything you do, like you were saying, James. Like, if you have someone who spearheaded something and then immediately goes, I'm going to go off and do my own thing, you either follow that person or you go, okay, why did they leave? And then there was rumours central, so I'm not going to bore you with rumours, but obviously there's creative differences, loads of other fun stuff that supposedly is true, but you don't know what is true.
Basically, Privateer Press is in a lot of trouble. That the people actually running the company don't even really play the game, that whenever good ideas are being proposed, that they're not actually, nobody's listening, people are focusing on side games, not the main game, and all they can kind of really hope is that maybe these side games are going to save the company, because Warmachine as it is in a lot of trouble, and bad, 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 bad.
And when you have people actively leaving the company at a regular rate, and not just the regular kind of churn of staff, we're talking about the high level people, right? We're talking about, 2018 Will Schick leaves to join Atomic Mass Games. 2019 Doug Seacat, lead writer at Privateer Press, he leaves. William Hungerford leaves in 2021, right? The big name people, the people that were showing up in the trailers and talking about the products, when they're jumping ship, it's a sign that there's something wrong with the ship.
This is more of the canary in the mine that's forewarning, like this is when you can now correct the ship. It's when DC went to Steamforged Games. That is oh man, one of my friends is gone. He and I used to chill and talk about random stuff, and without him around, it just didn't feel the same there. I mean, it was still Privateer, everything was still running, and we could definitely get back into the game because he wanted to explore other options. That's what. Anyway, so it was going to happen one way or another. He was going to jump ship, but when he left and Steamforged Games got a hold of him, I mean, come on, that already right there should say, oh, hey, that could have been a moment, because later on, a decade later, you know what Steamforged Games does. Yeah. So it's like, oh wow. Well, shoot, the writing could have been on the wall, but honestly, the only person you theoretically needed there was, well, Matt Wilson and what's his name, Jason Souls, because the whole game is Jason Souls' idea in the first place. So theoretically, you only need those two. But then the supporting people, you still need, your movie can't just rely on the director, right? You need the special effects person, the writers, and everyone else needed. So the support staff they had, all of a sudden, Will Schick's leaving happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there went, with him leaving, at least 9 people left. So, with him. So, the creative team, basically, now you can't make a movie because you don't have your special effects person, your writers, your marketing people is gone. All you have is your director and your actors now.
Because all of a sudden you've lost control. You've had the success, and the success grew and grew until it started encountering problems, some of which were of your own creation. But then you get all the little things that individually maybe you'd be able to figure out. But when they start happening in rapid succession, you're done. There's no coming back from that.
Whenever you ask what killed a game, obviously that's hyperbolic language, but it's not really what killed a game, it's what killed a game for you.
A lot of people didn't like the transition from one edition to another, and that's exactly with any game you see. People go I don't like this edition, I'll wait for another one to come out. And unfortunately, another one never really came out, and when it did, the game had already been, it was gone.
I think the void, to some degree, is that as they take their foot off the gas, or they were going in the wrong direction, either of the two, as sales dropped and as interest starts to wane and focus gets turned to other games, I think the void has been filled. I do think that now, 40k, prime example, it's massive, it's bigger than it's ever been, and it uses a lot of the tools that Warmachine used to be a successful game.
Me personally, it was just sad, because it was a good 8 years of my life I had basically been doing. I got into making YouTube battle reports because of Warmachine, because no one was really doing it. I started a podcast that eventually ended up having people who were representing Team England as hosts. It basically started off as me with a few of my mates who played Kador to then people who are well respected in the UK scene to be actual co-hosts in my thing. That's a thing I'll always remember about it. Yeah, like the amount of money I spent on minis and like, well, with any hobby really, you just kind of look back on it and go like, oh man, that sucks.
And the great irony with Warmachine and Hordes is the games aren't actually dead. Under Steamforged Games, they do exist. They are continuing the licenses, they're continuing to make new models and new factions. After Lock and Load Fest 2025, they've announced that the Press Ganger program is coming back.
So we recognise that the Press Ganger program had an incredible value to the community. We want to preserve everything that was great about that program, and all of the things that didn't quite work the way that they should have, we're going to be polishing those out. So we're going to share with you how this Press Ganger program is going to be rolling out over the coming months, so you can understand how best to engage with this particular program.
Every single type of game comes back, and you know, it will come back again at some point.
But I do try and get people into the game. When we recently Steamforged, obviously ran the new Tribes thing on my manufacturing. And part of the intro to Tribes was, hey, here's a free 30-point cadre for the Hivemind cadre, which is it's now part of Dark Operations Cephalix. It's its own thing with its own cards, which is great. And instead of having they've got the 3 different monstrosities, but they're the same chassis with different bits. That's fine, that works, that's how older models were done. And it also means if you happen to have those models lying around in plastic or metal, they're still viable. Hey, get your old stuff out of the cupboard, you can use it.
Privateer Press as a company still exists. They manufacture the Monsterpocalypse tabletop miniatures game and the Level 7 Escape board game. And that's it. That's all they have now.
But I feel like you'll always have these memories tied to certain games. Like Warmachine is a huge big part of my 20s to like my mid 30s now, and it still is because I love the lore and I still play other games other than obviously the main miniatures game.
The problem is it's not the same as it was, and it can't ever be the same as it was, because the game's not the same and the models aren't the same, and the old models can't come back because the means to produce them are gone. We build this mythos around the games and the companies that we are consumers of, that we are fans of, right? We like to think of them as larger than life, that the personalities, the creatives, the directors and the people responsible for the experiences that we enjoy, the hobby that we enjoy, are larger than life. It's hard not to do that, because at the end of the day, they become celebrities in their own right. The problems come when you realise that, and you remember that they are still just people at the end of the day. And people make mistakes. And people make bad decisions, and people make good decisions. And companies rise and fall based off of the decisions that individuals make. You know, maybe Page 5 was just a silly tongue-in-cheek thing back in the day, but people don't see it like that now. Maybe the competitive mindset was really important when it was just a bunch of guys in a shed wanting to decide who the best gamer was out of them. But not so much when you're trying to run a multi-million-dollar business and keep new customers coming in around the clock. Maybe having a small run of hips-injected models done by the Chinese made sense if you believed that the money generated from that could then allow you to establish that back home. Maybe the move to 3D printing miniatures made sense if you genuinely believe that that technology was going to completely change the wargaming landscape. Maybes and ifs and on it goes. For this documentary, I reached out to a lot of people that I knew who were either passionate about Warmachine or represented the newer generation of people getting into Warmachine, but also people who worked on Warmachine, people who worked at Privateer Press. That's what makes this documentary stand out, because ultimately I wanted to ask some of the questions that form part of the history, part of the folklore around Warmachine and Hordes and Privateer Press and its rise and fall, but we just never actually get any answers to. I wanted to ask those questions and get those answers for me and for you, and to actually have that be a fixed point in the history now. This documentary is a fixed part of this game's history now. And I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you have watched the complete, fully edited version of this, all hour and a half of it, I want to say a massive thank you for taking the time to do that. If you've watched through all 3 parts and got to this point, again, I want to say a massive thank you for your time to watch through. If you've enjoyed these videos, this documentary, I would love it if you could leave a like, a comment, a subscribe, and please check out my Patreon if you would like to see more documentaries like this. I have got more planned in the pipeline. This documentary itself took many months of research and interviewing people and looking at footage online, and ultimately I hope gives you a perspective into the life and death of a war game that before wasn't quite covered as expansively as previously. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. My voice is almost gone now, and I can't tell you how happy it makes me feel to know that this was a good take. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
I'm Aidan Jennings for Channel Big News. This is a regular sized mic. I'm just very tall.
Woolwich Ginevra with armour of 14. My flamethrower is power 12, so I need to get at least 18 to kill her outright. Oh, would you look at those dice? 6, 6, 6. Gone. One-shotted, assassinated your bullshit with my warjack. Best day ever. All those metal models, all that cheesy bullshit for nothing. Yes.
Okay, Donald, we have 11 minutes. Talk what you like about the miniatures. The models don't glue together. They don't even fit together. You can't see it now because of the glue, and I had to use so much glue. But if I'd managed to try and glue it together with a thin amount of glue, you could have seen right through them, literally to the other side. I know, I've seen it.